I want to thank everybody for coming. I know in May we weren't expecting 10 inches of snow, and I know we didn't have the amount of teams here that we're used to having, but I still think it was a good turnout and it's pretty good rugby. So several years ago, and I think me and Jeremiah started talking about having a Hall of Fame because a lot of teams, a lot of you out here have Hall of Fame teams or have Hall of Fames on your teams, and I thought we should, as a union, have a Hall of Fame. Now we don't have a place, like a physical place, yet. Hopefully we'll, at some point, maybe one of you guys will donate a physical, because a lot of this, like my dad saves everything, so he started dragging out like the oldest, like the newspapers that just crumble when you touch them. And it'd be nice to actually get that stuff somewhere that's taken care of, and so we can kind of preserve all this. And it is. I didn't realize it until we got close that it was 40 years of rugby in Iowa, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because I at one point was literally like a whippersnapper, and these old boys all saw me as a whippersnapper, and my little boy that's 7 is running around. And I was 8 when I started running around in Iowa Falls doing rugby, so it's kind of cool. Anyway, so when I decided to start this Hall of Fame thing, put some emails out to some people and said, who do we think, are some people, bouncing names off. We came up with 10 names, and I thought it was a good list. I have no idea what we're going to do going forward, so I'd love to have anybody. I think Dave Schleter sent me what Dubuque does as far as inducting more people, and I think in the future I want to do administrators going into the Hall, administrators and coaches, and then players going into the Hall of Fame. So I'll take any suggestions. I'm literally just kind of making this up as we go. So I'll take any suggestions from anybody. Anyway, so we picked, like I said, we had 10 guys, and eventually we will have women going in as well. And I asked several people that were either significant in those people's lives to get up and talk about them. I asked each one of them to write a bio, and it's kind of funny because a couple of them wrote like a paragraph, and then several wrote pages. Lenny. But that also speaks to literally the amount of the dedication, the effort, the time that they put into the sport for you guys, especially if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, to be able to enjoy rugby in Iowa. So anyway, so we'll get this thing started and chat about each one of them. We got each one of them a plaque. Which says, in appreciation for your service and dedication to Iowa rugby for the past 40 years. Iowa Rugby Union. It says May 5th, 2013. Anyway, so I'm gonna have the people that I asked to come up and talk about each person, and we're gonna start out with Dr. Tom Altemeyer, and Craig Harris is gonna come up and talk about it.
Those of you that know nothing about Tom Altemeyer, he was a remarkable man in many levels. And I can talk about the physical skills he had, the character he had. I mean, he was 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds, and ran a 10-second flat high school, 100 yards. So he was physically gifted. That said, when he went to Luther, he was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, and he chose to go to medical school instead. He started playing in medical school, rugby, and with Francis Bisney, and then he moved to Des Moines and played with Des Moines for a long time. Dearly loved those people, dearly loved the camaraderie and the rugby that he was part of. And he was offered to move to Iowa Falls to open practice, and he didn't want to stop that. He didn't want to let that go. So he was my neighbor, and he was we were sitting on the swing on our front porch, and he said, "Do you want to start a rugby club?" Sure. What's rugby? And so in 1976 we started this club, and I am so proud, and Tom would be so proud to see what it's grown into. So, right here. This is Margin Aldemeyer, and she will accept for Tom.
Next up is going to be Phil Kaiser is going to be speaking on behalf of Bill Windsor.
I started my career in 1969 up at Iowa State in the days of three-point tries. Some of you old boys remember those. Been associated with the Des Moines team since inception, spring of 1970. Got a chance to tour England twice in 73 and 77. Heart of America team. We not only had fun playing over there, but we studied what made rugby teams successful. And what we found is it's not just the playing group, it's having a separate group of old boys that had retired but still got involved with the club. And quite often they'd set up a foundation and they'd raise money and they'd build the facilities and they'd take care of public relations and help throw the parties and do everything except for telling the kids how to play and hiring the coach and stuff. So we started on that in late 70s. In 79, we committed to the land that is now what we own out in West Des Moines. And if you've played down there, you know it's one of the, probably the top 5 or top 10 club-owned facilities in the nation. It takes money to get these things done. And I bet there's probably not 10 people here who even know who Bill Windsor was. Bill never played the game. Bill was attracted to rugby as a spectator. He wasn't really an athlete. But back in those days, we had learned that very few people came out to play. So if somebody came out to watch, you shook their hand, you introduced yourself, and you welcomed to the club. And Bill never got married, and we became his extended family. We didn't know Bill Windsor had money at the time until we did our first fundraiser. And we're going out soliciting $100 donations, and Bill says, "Can I make a donation?" And Bill never dressed very well and stuff. He dressed like rugby players. And so he said, "Can I write a check?" And we said, "Sure." And he brings over a check for $10,000. And we kind of laughed, and we said, "Bill, you don't have $10,000. I said, "Oh yeah, I've got a $1 million stock portfolio. In fact, Hobie Bannister, one of the founders of the clubs, manages it for me." How Hobie had never related that to us, we didn't know. And then the next thing he says is it okay if my mother writes a $10,000 check from her foundation? "Yeah, Bill, that'll probably work out okay." So that started the relationship from the Des Moines Rugby Club and the Windsors. And that's what separates Des Moines from most every other club in the state, is the money factor, the organizational factor, the fact that we started working on setting up not one but 2 501c3 nonprofit corporations. The lawyers and accountants in the group understand the power of that, and started doing fundraising and made the commitment way back in the 70s. When Bill died, he left us in his will. And even though we already had a 2-story barn, that was kind of a POS, but it was better than everybody else had in the state. The money from Bill's estate allowed us to tear it down and build a state-of-the-art clubhouse. And so when you come down to Des Moines, you will come to Windsor Hall, and it's named for Bill. Our 2 fields, Bartlett Field and Windsor Field, are named for our first coach, Barry Bartlett, who's also passed away, and then the second field's named for Bill. So Bill is what all of you clubs need, okay? It's that guy who doesn't necessarily play rugby, but he's got deep pockets, and if you make a friend out of him, he'll be a friend for life. So thank you, Bill. We'll remember you forever.
So Next up, we have Ray Keith from Des Moines, and Crystal Nye, who plays rugby at UNI. When I asked her, she was like, I love talking in front of people, and I'm really, really excited to talk about Ray. So.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Ray, if you want to come up, you can come up. So I was privileged to be coached by Ray for a couple years in high school in Des Moines, and he was an awesome coach, and he committed and was at practices and took games together and really did a lot for us and really helped me fall in love with rugby and encouraged me to pursue rugby in college. And Ray actually started out his rugby career at University of Northern Iowa, and then he played there until he played for the Black Hawk Rugby Club, and then with them they traveled and he played in New Zealand, playing several games there, and then and then he moved back to Des Moines and played for a while there, and then did some playing out in Washington and California, and then moved back to Iowa in 1990, and there he retired from playing, but joined the surfing world. So that's what he does now, and he also plays for the Golden Oldies Rugby, and he's played in festivals at Edinburgh, Scotland, and Sydney, Australia. So I think it's great, and Ray was, he definitely deserves this, and I've been honored to be coached by him, and he's really taught me a lot, and I probably wouldn't be here standing and playing rugby today if it weren't for him. So.
Trust me, Craig, I'm not hugging you.
All right, so next on the list is Earl Stroop. A lot of you, if you don't come to the rugby meetings, you don't know Earl that well. And if you come to the rugby meetings, you all know everybody hates rugby meetings. Earl actually revels in rugby meetings and loves talking about like words that are spelled wrong in grammar that's not used properly. And that comes from being a teacher. But Earl's one of those people, obviously, that has dedicated the majority of his life to rugby. And he's also somebody, even like when I first come, the hardest part of rugby is the administration stuff. Even Jeremiah would say it's just, you would just much rather either be coaching or playing rather than sitting in a room listening to a bunch of idiots talking about whatever, you know, amending something, amending this or amending that. But we need people to go to those meetings and look out for Iowa all the time. And Earl was one of those people who went to those early Midwest meetings and looked out for us so we can all be standing here enjoying this. He played for the Irish of the Quad Cities, is how he has this down on there for me. Ambrose, Albert Lee, and Palmer College. The administration that he's done, the offices that he's held were the president of the Irish of the Quad Cities, president of the Iowa Rugby Union, VP of the Iowa Rugby Union, treasurer of the Iowa Rugby Union, treasurer or VP of the Midwest Rugby Union, and then he coached the Irish of the Quad Cities, Clinton, Augustana, St. Ambrose, Independence, and the Iowa Select Side. And then he represented the Midwest Rugby Union at the first USA capping ceremony. And Earl, like I said, is somebody who, if I have a question about some administrative thing, I usually call Earl, and I just know that when I call him, it's going to be about a 20-minute conversation. And he usually gives me the answer in the first minute. And then we just bullshit about everything else after that. So anyway, Earl, I wanted to say thank you and congratulate you on your time and your dedication to Iowa. Earl said, "Oh, I don't get to talk?" No. Next up is a guy a lot of you guys have, depending on your age, you've seen him stand and yell on the sidelines. When I played against him and I heard him stand and yell on the sidelines. So Craig Scott, if you could come up.